digging into the data. In this video, we're going to go through the student profile data that's associated with Project One in EDU525. You'll need to become really familiar with this data and analyze it and use it to guide your Project One submission. So I'm going to scroll down the page to the bottom where there's the supporting materials section. And when I expand that, the second resource is the Project One student profile data. You're going to have to use all the information in this resource to build your entire Project One submission. So I've clicked on that and opened it in a new tab. At the top of the document, it explains that this is a data set that you will use for the project. The class size represented in the data set is 40 students. Now, sometimes in the course you teach, you may have more than 40, whereas if you're a lower grades teacher, some of you have talked about being kindergarten, first grade, second grade teachers, hopefully your numbers are a lot lower than that, maybe 20, give or take a few. The goal is that you take the characteristics of the students profiled in this data sheet, pretend they are in the same grade level, subject area, courses you teach online, and use this information to think about, process, and design learning opportunities in your classroom. So what happened is they sent out a survey, the teacher sent out a survey with 5 questions, and those 5 questions are the following. Why did you select online versus in class? How do you best learn? Do you have any known barriers to online learning? And what do you find best helps you succeed in an online environment? And finally, what would you like me to know about your family and living situation? As a result, the data has been grouped into 4 main categories. They are educational supports, and the categories are listed on the left, learning preferences, learning constraints, and cultural characteristics. Those are the 4 main, and then there is a 5th category that's all other characteristics. We'll look at that in just a minute. But if you look at the results within each section, so when it comes to educational supports, in the class of 40, you have 4 students with 504 plans. They all require extra time on tests, and one of the 4 requires reduced class homework due to fatigue. So you'll have to take those items into consideration. 5 students are gifted. Of those, 2 are gifted in math, 1 in science and math. 2 are gifted in reading and writing, 1 in science and math, 1 is classified as supercognitive, and 1 has subject acceleration in math. So you have a couple different things to think about there. You have 4 students with IEPs. 4 of those require extended time, 2 students require reduced choices, and 4 have additional special education support. You also have 3 of the 4 students that require read aloud. So when you are putting your students in groups, when you are designing, in part 1 of Project One, you're going to go through and do an analysis. You're going to break this down into a written narrative, and you're going to have a section that talks about educational supports, where you're going to address each of these 4 different classifications or groups of students and talk about some very basic, high-level examples of things that you would need to consider in your specific online course, and you're going to need to include APA citations to go along with that. Where I want to spend a little bit more time is when I get down into the learning preferences and learning constraints sections, because I want you to connect the 2. Sometimes I don't always see that, and so I want to bring that to light. So if we look at the learning preferences, we can see that 10 of the students in the class report preferring visual aids, images, and videos. But I want to skip down to the learning constraints because there are 3 students who have physical constraints which may affect learning. And so the first bullet point in that section says, 1 of the 3 students has cerebral palsy, limiting movement. But the important part I want to highlight is the second bullet point that says 2 of the 3 students are visually impaired. So within this class of 40, you have 10 that prefer visual aids, images, and videos. But you also have 2 that are visually impaired. And so those 2 things do not really align together well. So you need to make sure as you are going through part 1 and part 2 that you highlight how you're going to support both groups. If you decide to use a lot more visual aids, images, and videos, how are you going to address that with the students that are visually impaired? Okay, if we get into the next part, 19 of the students in the class report preferring hands-on activities. How are you going to conduct hands-on activities in an online environment? What types of materials are you going to use? What types of considerations do you have to take into your thought process when designing the lessons? All of these pieces are covered between part 1 and part 2 of your submission. And then 11 of the students in the class report preferring a preference for discussion and having information read to them. So then I want to go down into cultural characteristics. 15 students speak a language other than English in the home. 10 of the 15 are recent refugees from another country. While they do not live together, they are supported through the same agency. And 5 of the 15 students are U.S. citizens who speak English as a second language. So again, as you're teaching the material, what kinds of supports are you going to build in to address those that do not speak English as their native language? And 5 of these are transition from religious-based schools to public online schooling. What does research show in there that you'll have to address? Then you get to the other characteristics. 15 of the students would qualify for free and reduced lunch, making them eligible to receive Title I services. 2 students report housing insecurities. 5 students indicate they have inconsistent internet access or connectivity. So again, what kinds of things? There's lots of research that has come out over the past year and a half involving internet access at home and limited connectivity. What kinds of things are you going to do to help address those situations? This could include, recording, providing archive recordings in a downloadable format that are available or could be, sent out in different ways. There's different things that have been used to address that situation, especially in the situation we've gone through in the past year and a half. Over 50 of the students reporting having had issues at a traditional school, including bullying, instances of significant behavior, truancy, or lack of motivation. How are you going to address those students? 2 have been retained. 4 are part of military families, some of whom are currently living abroad. And 3 students report they have alternated a number of times between a traditional school setting and a variety of online schools. So again, as you are planning out your content, you need to integrate these specific characteristics with the concepts of universal design for learning and understanding by design, and how will you put those 3 things together in order to create lessons that will welcome and integrate unique and diverse learners in your online classroom. And so that's what you're going to focus in on as you begin to write part 1 and part 2 of your Project 1 submission.